He said she didn't scream. She didn't scream. That's what Bruckner said.
Oh my God. He said she didn't scream. That must mean that Bruckner kidnapped her and told this guy Madeleine didn't scream. Case closed. I should delete my channel. All my videos are wrong. He said she didn't scream. Of course not. So this is known as contextotomy. And it is another very common tactic of media manipulation, of fake news. Did Christian Bruckner kidnap Madeleine McCann in 2007? I'm Deception Detective. I'm an attorney trained in statement analysis, and this channel exists to expose lies and manipulation. In today's video, we're going to watch a brand new documentary from 60 Minutes Australia, which they describe as featuring the star witness at the center of a breakthrough in the Madeleine McCann trial. We'll assess whether or not this truly represents a breakthrough, and if not, we will dissect the techniques the media uses to persuade a naive audience into believing that this is in fact a significant development in the quote-unquote Madeleine McCann trial. And the techniques I'm going to point out here are not unique to 60 Minutes, they're not unique to Australia, and they're not unique to true crime reporting. With all that said, let's listen.
How much of a difference would it have made if police acted on his phone calls?
Big difference.
A new witness speaks.
He took off the mask. It was Christian B.
Will the truth about Maddie McCann
He said she didn't scream.
finally be revealed?
The evidence we have, there's no doubt.
Next Friday marks a significant development in the 17-year-long Madeleine McCann case. The prime suspect in her abduction and presumed murder, convicted pedophile Christian Bruckner, goes on trial in Germany. But not for what it's thought he did to Maddie. He'll face court charged with multiple sex offences against other children and a number of women.
So already, we have 60 Minutes telling us that their description of this video is misleading. They said that they have a star witness in the Madeleine McCann trial. There is no Madeleine McCann trial. It's not a thing. They have a suspect who is on trial for other cases. In other words, this is no Madeleine McCann trial. Now let's see, and I've watched this before, so I've already pointed out many misleading things they've done, but we're going to point them out as we see them. Right now, we have them pointing out that their description of the video is misleading, and in fact, it's known as priming. So priming is when you say something before your big pitch to try to persuade people to see things that way. For example, if I have a car dealership and you come through the door and I say, "We've got the best prices in town. What sort of car are you looking for?" Now I've set the stage that we care about pricing, whether or not that's true. I've primed you to believe whatever price I quote you is going to be better than everywhere else you've looked because I've told you we have the best prices in town. Here, they've told us that there is in fact a Madeleine McCann trial when there is not one. It's called priming. That's the first tactic. You'll see this all the time in news reports. And we actually saw it in my other video I did about Christian Bruckner, where we looked at another report about him. I think the video is called How to Spot a Cover-Up, where the headline of the story did not match at all what actually was contained in the story. And I see lots of people who comment on my video saying, "Hey DD, didn't they catch some German guy? Isn't there some German guy who kidnapped Madeleine and he's going on trial?" The reason so many people think that is because they don't read past the headline. The news has primed them to believe that there is some suspect who is on trial for Madeleine McCann's kidnapping. Whereas that last part is not true. There is a suspect and he is on trial, but it has nothing to do with her kidnapping.
Now, while it's not technically about Madeleine, the trial will be an important step for prosecutors in their pursuit of the truth about her death. And that's because of the evidence of their star witness, who tonight speaks publicly for the first time. The disappearance of Maddie McCann continues to haunt us. 17 years on, hers is the most well-known abduction case in history, taken from her family's holiday apartment in Praia de Luz, a seaside resort in Portugal. It was the...
Here's some more priming taken from her family's apartment. She is allegedly taken. There's no proof that someone took her out of that apartment. And if you've seen my series about Madeleine McCann, this is my 21st video in this series. I believe that something happened to her in that room and her parents were responsible for it.
The 3rd of May 2007. Maddie's parents, Jerry and Kate McCann, were just 70 metres away, enjoying dinner with friends. At 10 p.m, it was Kate's turn to check on the group's children. She was instantly alert to something wrong in her apartment.
The bedroom door where the 3 children were sleeping was open much further than we'd left it. I went to close it to about here, and then as I got to here, it suddenly slammed. And literally as I went back in, the curtains of the bedroom, which were drawn, but were closed, it was like a gust.
Suddenly, it literally, I've broken down this story so many times in my videos, so I'm not going to belabor the point here. But whenever Kate tells this story, it has all the hallmarks of a scripted story. So if you want me to break down, if you want to see me break down her story, you can watch my videos, How to Spot a Fake Story and What is Missing from Their Story, as well as How Repetition Reveals Lies.
A gust of wind kind of just blew them open. I mean, I knew straight away that she'd been taken.
I knew straight away she'd been taken. Once again, this is another sign of a hoax. We see this in the Wells case. We see this in the Ramsey's case. We've seen it in the William Tyrrell case in Australia, which a series I'm currently working on right now, which 60 Minutes also did documentary about. So one consistent thing in all the cases where I believe the parents are hoaxing about something happening to their child, they are conclusive that the kid was kidnapped. Right? I knew right away my kid was kidnapped. I just knew it. It could only be a kidnapping. That is a sign that someone is trying to push a narrative, that they are trying to hoax you. Whereas real parents, when their kids go missing, might consider a kidnapping one of the possibilities, but they are not conclusive that that's the only possibility. They allow for the kid wandering off. Maybe the kid's playing hide and seek. Maybe one of the other parents there is hiding them as some sick, crazy practical joke, right? Anything is on the table until they find their kid. The conclusiveness in spite of the evidence is the red flag. And I've said that many, many times. So I'm sure if you're a longtime subscriber, that is drilled into your mind at this point.
The terror and despair in that moment is palpable.
And I've no doubt that Madeleine was targeted, and that makes us, sick.
Again, more conclusiveness. I have no doubt that Madeleine was targeted. How would you know that? There was no evidence of a kidnapper. How would you know a kidnapper was targeting your kid? And beyond that, if we're just to apply critical thinking, why would a kidnapper target the child of 2 parents who are wealthy enough and high status enough to actually kick up a fuss. There are plenty of poor children, children of homeless people that you could take without anyone likely ever finding out or launching a big investigation or being able to fund a private investigation. Once again, the conclusiveness in spite of the evidence is the red flag for a hoax.
To the core, to think that somebody was watching us and our daughter and then targeted her, a predator.
That predator, according to authorities, is Christian Bruckner. He goes on trial in Germany this week for sexually assaulting other children and raping a 14-year-old, as well as 2 other women. He has...
So this is what's known as appeal to spite. And I know it doesn't work on you or me, but this does work on some people, where they get so worked up and so emotional that they stop thinking logically. So they think, hey, this guy's a predator. He did things to other girls. He definitely took Madeleine. We should fry him. Well, lots of that I agree with. If he did do things to little girls or anyone, fry him. That's fine with me. But it doesn't mean that he took Madeleine. And just as this news report believed that priming the audience would work, they also show their disdain for their own audience by believing that an appeal to spite will work. So if you can just remain logical, we will see, is there anything that connects this monster to Madeleine? And if we don't find anything connecting him to Madeleine, doesn't mean he's not a monster. Doesn't mean I think he should walk free, but it doesn't mean that he took Madeleine. And you'd be surprised how many people can fall for this trap. Right? German man bad. Okay. What does that have to do with Madeleine?
Has past convictions for molesting children and is currently serving a 7-year jail term for raping a 72-year-old woman. 4 years ago, Bruckner was sensationally identified as the prime suspect in the Madeleine McCann case by prosecutor Hans Christian Wolters, and remains so. Do you believe?
So for 4 years, they have not been able to gather enough evidence on this guy to formally charge him. What they're doing here, doing all these interviews and press releases about him being a suspect, in America could even amount to jury tampering. The fact that they're releasing so many stories insinuating that Christian Bruckner is responsible to the general public, flooding it for 4 years, could amount to enough tampering with the jury that any jury who sits down is likely to convict him without any evidence, just because they think in their head, like so many people do, hey, I saw a story saying that this guy did it, so he must have done it. This is a bad guy. Wasn't there a headline I saw 3 years ago where it said that they had the guy who took Madeleine? This must be him. There's a reason that in America, at least, judges put gag orders on particular cases where prosecutors can't go out and do interviews and make insinuations if a case is high profile enough, because it could taint the jury. It could poison the well.
At the moment,
you have
yes.
the right man.
At the moment, yes. We found nothing that Christian B. couldn't be the murderer. There's no alibi or something like that.
This is big as well. We found nothing that said he couldn't be the murderer. In America, at least, you're innocent until proven guilty. And this seems to be a phenomenon, a modern phenomenon of too much data. So now we have a deluge of data. We can pull phone records. We can look at Christian B's Facebook profile. We can see where people were in 2007 and their whole histories, phone tracking, friends he was with, a bunch of circumstantial evidence. With so much data, you are likely to get coincidences simply because there's so much data out there. So I'm not surprised that with enough data dredging and gathering, they could find a verified pedophile sadist in the area that Madeleine was at the time she went missing. But that doesn't mean he did it. That is a big flaw. It's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy when it comes to statistics and graphs. The way a detective or a researcher or anyone trying to test a theory should do it is to paint the target first, to get a suspect first, and then you shoot your theories at it and your potential evidence at the target and see if you hit your target. You don't just fire a bunch of shots and see where there was a cluster and then go paint the target. And that seems to be what happened here. They collected as much data as they could, registered sex offenders in the area at the time, people with a record, anyone who another little slimy friend of would snitch on in order maybe to get a reduced sentence. And they see where they get a little cluster and they go paint the target around the cluster. And in this case, it seems to be that there was a cluster of evidence and they went and painted their target around it, and it happened to be this guy, Christian B. A true detective, someone who actually wants to get to the truth, should come up with their theory first. And that's what we did on this channel. We started with Occam's razor. What's the most likely scenario? The most likely scenario when something happens to a kid is that the parents were responsible. So we started there. And 20 videos ago, we started listening to the parents' statements. My first video in this series has 250,000 views. Why? Because I'm listening to the words of the parents. I'm not looking at some evidence that you and I can't hold and touch, or a report that you and I can't necessarily analyze. We're just listening to people's words straight from the horse's mouth, and we can all understand that. And if what they say sounds like a lie and meets the empirical words that people use when they lie, or any of the 52 rules to spot a liar in my deception deck, which you can order at deceptiondeck.com, then we need to be skeptical about anything they say. So unlike this German prosecutor, we started with a theory and went from there. He started with data and then painted a target around where all the data clustered. So it's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. I didn't put on my list here, but I hope it makes sense. So please let me know in the comments if that makes sense, right? If I shoot a gun at a barn wall 1,000 times, there's going to be somewhere where bullets cluster. And if I go paint my target around that, I'm doing things backwards. If I want to test my gun and I want to test my theory, I need to paint a target and then I shoot at the target and see if I hit.
Like that?
And you have no doubt that Maddie McCann has been murdered?
Yes.
All right, the other thing that he said there that was wrong is we have no evidence that he didn't do it. Where was I in 2007? I don't know. I don't have an alibi that I didn't do it. Do you have an alibi that you didn't do it? Right? That's not how investigations work. That's how things work when you're considering everyone on the planet and then you're trying to zero in on someone.
The murderer, there's no alibi or something like that.
And you have no doubt that Maddie McCann has been murdered?
Yes. Because of the evidence we have, there's no doubt. Madeleine McCann.
What evidence? They have no evidence.
Ken is dead and Christian B. Murdered her.
Under German privacy laws, the suspect's identity has to be protected, but the world knows Christian B. is monster Christian Bruckner. Frustratingly, despite being certain they have the right man, police have not yet charged him with Maddie McCann's abduction or murder. What else?
So this has been going on for 4 years now, ever since they announced him. They have not charged him yet. This could be textbook poisoning the well, jury tampering. You're trying to convict someone before the trial by getting the jury to believe your argument before you have to make it. And I did include that one on my list here yesterday. So I don't like that.
What else do you need to bring these charges?
I don't know if we need something more. We have only one chance, so we decided to investigate as much as we can. And if it took much more time than normal investigations, it's a prize for the best result.
Und was hat dann gesagt?
The best, that's telling as well. We want the best result. Not that we want to get the right guy or we want to know the truth. They just want the best result. And this is a scary thing for a prosecutor to say. The worst kinds of prosecutors are the ones who care more about their track record than putting bad people into prison. Right? So they only want to take cases that are a complete lock because they want a perfect conviction rate. So they don't risk trial on other people where it's not a complete lock, which is bad. Because it means that even if you had enough circumstantial evidence to convict someone, they'll refuse to take the case because there is a possibility that they might lose. Then you also get prosecutors who don't particularly care if someone is guilty or innocent. And this is rare, obviously. Most prosecutors are great people. But you also get ones who don't particularly care if someone is guilty or innocent, as long as they know they can prove their case in court. And that seems to be what this German prosecutor is doing, in my opinion. It seems like he's taking his sweet time to let all these stories filter out to the German public, to anyone who might be on this jury, in order to poison the well, and to collect as much data and circumstantial evidence and nonsense as he can collect. Right? More data doesn't mean more knowledge. I could go out there right now and find enough coincidences to point the finger at someone else, I'm sure. But that's not how an investigation should work. You should have your suspect and then you go find the evidence. You don't go looking for evidence and then try to find a suspect. With the amount of data we have out there now of phones, CCTV, Apple Watches, eyewitnesses who are notoriously unreliable, you can find just about enough data that's coincidental to convict someone. Right? So you can't point your finger and say, I can find enough data to convict you. But I could say, if I go to Praia da Luz right now, I could find enough data, enough coincidences to convict someone. And it's kind of like that parlor trick where if you have a big room of people, a theater of people, right, a lecture hall of people, and you say, I bet there are 2 people here who share the same birthday. Statistically, coincidentally, there will be 2 people. You can't say I can find someone with the same birthday as you in particular, right? You, John, I can find someone here with the same birthday as you. You can't do that. But just based on the amount of data, on the amount of coincidences, you could say, if there's enough people, 2 people here will have the same birthday. And 99% of the times, you will be correct. So we have to be careful about coincidences. As we get more data, as people post more of their lives online, as there is more tracking of people, there are bound to be more coincidences.
Und ja.
They have time on their side and a star witness. Helga Busching, a petty crim and former friend of Bruckner, now in police protection.
A petty crim. What does that mean? A petty criminal, a little crook. So anyone with a criminal record, as far as I'm concerned, their credibility is down here. Anyone proven to lie in the past, their credibility is down here. And in fact, depending on the particular circumstances, even in court, you can impeach a witness this way. Not all the time. So this guy is a German criminal. What deal did he make? Do we know if he made a deal with the prosecutors? Yeah, I'll roll over on Christian B. I'll tell you something about him if you reduce my sentence, or you give me a radio from my cell. We don't know. I would like to know. And in fact, if this case went to trial, I would like to ask that. If I was, Christian B's defense attorney, what deal did you make with the prosecutors? What compelled you to come forward with this evidence against Christian B? Was it out of the kindness of your heart, or was it exchanged for something?
So this is your world scoop. We can have a listen.
Yes, of course. This is the
Investigative journalist Jutta Rabe is the first to get Bushing to speak on the public record. What he has to say about Maddie McCann is startling.
Ja, die hat ja nicht geschrien.
He said she didn't scream.
Das hat
She
er
didn't
gesagt,
scream.
ja.
That's what Brückner said.
Oh my God. He said she didn't scream. That must mean that Bruckner kidnapped her and told this guy Madeleine didn't scream. Case closed. I should delete my channel. All my videos are wrong. He said she didn't scream. Of course not. So this is known as contextotomy. And it is another very common tactic of media manipulation, of fake news. And what it is when a newspaper, whether it's published or a news report like this documentary, takes a quote out of context and presents it without any context, hoping that the audience will be naive enough to fill in the gaps. So it's a variation on a lie, one of the most sophisticated types of lies, which is information treatment, which is in the Deception Deck. Also, Deception Decks have shipped out. Thank you to everyone who has ordered. If you have ordered, please drop a comment below. Let me know how you like the deck. And also, please leave a review on the website with a photo, just so everyone else can get your unique take and the value you've gotten from the deck. All right, so if you've seen my last video about Christian Bruckner, which was titled How to Spot a Cover-Up, it's in my Madeleine McCann series, you should know the context of this quote. And the full context of this quote is this Helger Bushing guy and Christian B were allegedly talking about the Madeleine McCann kidnapping because they were both in Portugal or something at the time, and they were saying how strange it is that this girl was kidnapped. And Helger said to Christian, isn't it strange how, and I'm paraphrasing here, he said something along the lines of, isn't it strange how someone was able to take her out of the room without any of the neighbors or anyone hearing her scream? And Christian Bruckner said, hypothetically, she didn't scream, right? So how was she taken out of the room without anyone noticing? Well, obviously, Helger, she didn't scream. That is the context. What 60 Minutes Australia is deceptively doing here and really revealing their contempt for their own audience is presenting it as if it were an admission from Christian Bruckner. And as I said, I've watched this once through yesterday when it first came out, but I don't think at any point they ever give the full context behind this quote, which is extremely deceptive. And like I always say, a liar always has contempt for the people they lie to. So if 60 Minutes does not clarify the context of this quote, you can rest assured that they have contempt for their audience. They have contempt for you. They think you're stupid.
And then I looked at Mr. Bruckner and thought, what are you telling me now?
Was erzählt sie da jetzt?
Helger Bushing took these words to be a confession from Christian Bruckner. All
right, so they even outright say, Helger took this to be a confession. This was no confession. This was a response to a hypothetical question. That's like if I asked you, how did Captain Sully land the plane on the Potomac River? Well, he must have been really calm. He must have had his hands on the joystick and really been focusing. Does that mean I was the co-captain in the cockpit watching Sully land the plane? Of course not. It just means that I'm answering your hypothetical question with my most likely scenario to explain your question, to answer your question. That's what was happening here. And then once again, the appeal to spite is what silences people about talking about this case. All right, I've already been called every name in the book, so I don't particularly care. What I am doing here is pointing out that I don't think Christian B kidnapped Madeleine. I think this entire documentary is deceptive, and I think that Christian B is a very convenient fall guy because he is so unlikable. That doesn't mean I want to defend Christian B. Doesn't mean I don't think he belongs in prison, but he didn't kidnap Madeleine. And some people like to take the easy route and like to believe, hey, we caught the guy who kidnapped Madeleine. There's no way these loving parents can do that. I can't believe it. Personally, from what I've seen, I believe the parents did it through negligence and they covered it up out of a misguided sense of duty to keep their family together and to protect the twins. I don't think the McCanns are necessarily sociopathic or murderous. I think they are, at the worst, they are negligent and they were put in an extreme situation and they engage in an extreme response. Now, when it comes to raising money for a search for Madeleine that they likely know will never lead to her recovery because they actually know what happened to her, that starts to become a little bit less understandable, a little bit less forgivable.
Just a year after Maddie disappeared, the former friends had a chance encounter at a music festival where the conversation turned to the abduction of the little girl.
And then his reaction to that, that he said, what did you just say? She didn't scream? How can you know? Eh?
So notice how they left out the context. This is extremely deceptive. And I'm not surprised that the comments are turned off on this video. Turning off the comments is the sign of a coward, in my opinion. I always leave my comments on. I do not delete comments. Why? Because I stand behind what I say here. Also, my ultimate goal is to get to the truth. So if someone who doesn't like me, who thinks I'm wrong, puts a point in there that proves me wrong, I want to read it. I want to get to the truth.
Well, but in this moment, he realized he knows it. He has been there. He took her out.
There's no mistaking what Bruckner meant.
No, absolutely not. And I asked him that many times. I also said, how did he say it? And he said, very cold-blooded. Cold.
Who cares how he said it? So this little back and forth banter. This back and forth banter reminds me when two parents are talking in front of a kid to trick the kid, right? So two parents are sitting at the table and saying, oh, Santa Claus is coming in a few months. I hope he's going to bring presents for good little boys and girls. I really hope that someone in the house doesn't misbehave and gets all A's on the report card. That would be very bad if they misbehaved. That's what this reminds me of. That's the level of how patronizing this back and forth between these two people is right now. Because they have not pointed out the context, but they're going back and forth talking about how reliable, how cold-blooded this response was. Whereas when you know the context, you can see just how phony and deceptive this is.
Cold-blooded, he said that, so that he got really shocked.
Do you consider Helga B to be a good witness, to be believable?
I think he's believable. He was witness in another case against Christian B. And the court comes to the conclusion that everything Helga B said was the truth.
So that's also interesting, because everything Helga B said here was true. That entire interview clip, out of context clip they show us, was 100% true. Christian B probably did say that. Helga B probably did have some sort of reaction. But the context that is missing is that it was in response to a hypothetical question. So when this prosecutor says Helga B helped us convict Christian B in the past, and everything he said was true, that might be true. But is he a credible witness? Can he meet the testimony oath of to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? That I doubt. He can tell the truth, and he can even tell nothing but the truth. But right now, we're not seeing the whole truth, because the whole truth requires context. And context can change everything.
And so they sentenced Christian B for raping an older woman.
German police now believe Maddie was unable to scream because before abducting the 3-year-old, Bruckner had sedated her with paint solvent.
Yeah, that is.
All right, so this is also interesting. So the story they have here is that Bruckner sedated Madeleine with paint thinner and then took her out of the room. How long does paint thinner take to cause someone to be knocked out? Was any paint thinner found in the apartment? Is there any evidence of paint thinner being used? Another reason I think that the McCanns, even early on, said that, yes, it is possible that the kidnapper sedated Madeleine and might have even sedated the twins, is because I believe that they gave their kids routinely, gave them sedatives. So at that time, they couldn't be sure that Madeleine's body would not be discovered. So they wanted to allow for the possibility that if her body were discovered and sedatives were found in her bloodstream, they could say, yep, as we said, the kidnapper must have sedated her. Or if someone were to bring up how knocked out the twins were that night, right? Why did the twins sleep through so much noise and commotion of people searching for Madeleine? Children are prone to waking up and crying and yelling, right? And screaming. But these twins were fast asleep all night. Nothing could wake them. Why? Well, if anyone were to look into it, if anyone were to blood test them and found sedatives, the McCanns had already pre-built in their alibi, their excuse. Well, the kidnapper must have sedated them too, just to be safe. The kidnapper didn't kidnap them, but the kidnapper took their time to sedate all 3 children, tuck them in, make sure they stayed in bed, and then only took Madeleine. Is that possible? Yes, of course it's possible. Is it likely? No. What's more likely? What fits Occam's razor, the most likely scenario? That the parents did something out of negligence, right? So not out of malice or cold-bloodedness or insanity. Parents did something to their kid out of negligence. Something happened. I believe personally that it was over-sedating Madeleine or negligently sedating her. So not even giving her too much sedative. Just giving her sedative on a day when she might have been extra dehydrated from out playing on the beach or from eating a different diet or from being extra tired. And then not sticking around the way a responsible doctor should if they are going to sedate someone, which I don't believe they should have been doing anyway, to make sure that there were no complications. And then covering it up because they knew that if they were to call the police or report it, sedatives would be discovered and they would be on the hook for negligence.
Is now something I know from the police files, because paint solvent, if you are a small child and have small lungs, you get, unconscious very soon and very quick.
The police...
I'm curious if Christian B used paint solvent in any of these other cases. Did he sedate any of his other victims? Also, did he transport any of the other victims off the property? What's his MO? Because if he had done that, I bet they would have pointed it out. So the fact that they're clutching at straws to connect him to Madeleine McCann, but not telling us how his MO lines up with the McCann case is a great indicator to me that it doesn't line up with it, because if it did, they would be telling us about it.
Police investigation into Maddie's abduction has spanned 3 countries and now more than 1.5 decades. But according to witness Helge Bushing, police were tipped off years ago when, in 2008, he contacted Scotland Yard to raise his suspicions about his friend, Christian Bruckner. He called again on the 10th anniversary of Maddie's disappearance. He says neither phone call was followed up by police. It wasn't until 2020, when phone data placed Bruckner near Maddie's holiday apartment, that the German sex offender became the prime suspect.
So, plethora of data. The thing with data is, when data is represented without any relative number, how many convicted sex offenders were in Praia da Luz at that time? How far away do cell phone pings work in Praia da Luz? Did it mean he was in the hotel, or did it mean he could have been anywhere on that coast? The way data is presented is extremely important. But here they present it as if it's totally incriminating. And the reason I don't give them the benefit of the doubt is because I know the context of that quote they played earlier, and they didn't clarify it. So as far as I'm concerned, anything 60 Minutes says needs to be taken skeptically. When someone lies to you once, you can be sure they will lie to you again. And if they lie to you once and get away with it, don't expect them to feel bad and stop lying. If someone lies to you and gets away with it, they've just proven that you are deserving of their contempt. In their mind, you're too stupid to catch them lying. You deserve to be lied to. And the lies, you can expect the lies to become more frequent and bigger.
In her disappearance, how much of a difference would it have made if police acted on his phone calls?
Oh, I think if they would have acted in...
The other thing I want to know is, how many phone calls did they get? How many people called in to tip on other people? Also, was Helge Bushing in prison at that time or on trial? Was he looking to make a deal? What compelled him to call in 2008? And what compelled him to call 10 years later in 2018? If someone in my audience, I know I have lots of subscribers in Germany. I don't know if you can research this, but was he on trial both of those years? Did he have pending charges? Was there a deal to be made? Was there money in exchange for tips? And in those years, what compelled him to call those years? Because I suspect it was not out of the kindness of his heart.
In 2008, it would have probably made a big difference. Yeah? It was like still the hunt going on for who did it.
Bruckner was a sex offender at large, living between Germany and Portugal when he's suspected of kidnapping and killing Maddie McCann. Only now the true depth of his depravity is being exposed as he finally goes on trial, accused of sexual crimes against other women and children.
Dann habe ich dann halt ein drittes Video.
I watched a third video and there was another girl on it who was...
Once again, what does this have to do with Madeleine? Other cases have zero relevance on Madeleine. And if they had any relevance at all, it would be a pattern, an MO, a modus operandi. Does he break into hotels and steal British girls? That would be interesting to know. The fact that they're not pointing anything like that out suggests to me that nothing like that exists.
Tied to a tree with her hands behind her, completely naked.
There is page after page after page
Page after
here.
page, yeah. He's mainly complaining about the bad treatment he has.
I can't leave the cell because I have to fear that I will be attacked or killed by other inmates.
Good. Right, Helger's afraid to leave his cell because he's scared he'll get shanked. Good. I don't care. Right, so don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to defend him. I'm trying to get to the truth of what happened to Madeleine. And I'm not happy to end it, to pin it on one villain and let other villains get away, especially if those villains have been lying for a long time and taking money to perpetuate a search that they know will never lead to anything. So as always on my channel, the truth is the ultimate goal. Not a satisfying, whatever that prosecutor said, right? A satisfying conclusion to the case. I want the truth. I don't care if it's satisfying and makes me feel all fuzzy inside, or if it wraps up neatly, or if it's a theory that will get me the most clicks and views. Like you saw in my Nicola Bulley, Keely Rodney case, Amanda Knox, Nicole Kessinger, all those cases, if I had tilted the other way, I could have gotten way more clicks. I could have made my audience a lot happier, right? Some of my subscribers confirming their theories. But at the end of the day, the truth is the sole goal here.
Mates.
Prison does everything.
For over 9 months, journalist and documentary maker Jutta Rabe received letters from Christian Bruckner. The German is the prime suspect in the abduction and murder of 3-year-old Maddie McCann and is currently in jail for raping an elderly woman.
I have not raped this 72-year-old woman in Portugal, as I'm claiming all the time, and that I sit here in prison totally innocent, since I have also not done any of the other crimes that I'm accused of.
One thing regarding these quotes here, I'm not going to analyze his words because these letters were originally written in German. If they're written in English, I'd analyze them. But because they're translated from German, I don't want to make the same error that I made in my Amanda Knox series, where I took a translation from Italian to English as if it were correct, because it wasn't correct. So I don't speak German, so I cannot verify whether or not this translation is accurate or not. So we're just going to let it slide for now.
Did you ask him specifically about what happened to Maddie McCann?
Yeah, of course. And he writes so much bullshit. This man is dangerous and he's never telling the truth.
My way is paved with wrong convictions, but now the whole world is watching.
But this man, Helge...
The other thing, the logical fallacy here, the other persuasion tactic is called Kafka trapping. So that's the word for it, based on Franz Kafka. And Kafka trapping consists of whenever someone says they didn't do something, it means they did it, which isn't true, right? If you've followed my channel for a while, you know my beliefs on denials. Guilty people can rarely issue a reliable denial about something they did. Innocent people can usually give a reliable denial, and then they offer to present proof to back up their denial. So what they're doing here, saying, well, he says he didn't do it, so he must have done it. This is BS. When he says he didn't do it, that is called Kafka trapping. It's lazy thinking, right? Only a narc says they're not a narc. Only a guilty person says that they're not guilty. So you said you're not guilty, so you must be guilty. Right? That can go either way. That's so subjective. You could use it to manipulate things however you want. On this channel, if someone issues a reliable denial, we accept it. At least that's my rule. And I've even changed my mind on, what's his name? On the chess player, Hans Niemann, because he eventually issued a reliable denial about his match with Magnussen. So I've actually changed my mind based on a reliable denial. That's how important I think they are, and how hard I believe it is for a guilty person to give one. And one of my most watched videos is, what does a reliable denial look like? And reliable denials are so important. I'm just going to read you the rule about reliable denials from the deception deck so you know what to look for in a denial. And this applies to a criminal denial, or if you ask your spouse whether or not they're cheating on you, or you ask your kid if they cheated on their test, or if they stayed up late, or something along those lines. Here's how to spot a reliable denial. All right, so here is the reliable denial card. It's in the concept suit, assessing denials. When assessing a denial, it is important to evaluate its reliability. Liars often find it challenging to directly deny guilt. To detect reliable denials, consider these key elements. 1. Pronouns. Did the speaker use I, which often indicates honesty, or opt for a less personal pronoun like we or you? So when someone's denying something, you want them to say, I didn't do it, not, we didn't do it, or you couldn't have done this, right? So I. 2. Negation. Was a straightforward negation such as did not or didn't used? Or did the speaker choose a less reliable discrepancy verb like couldn't or wouldn't? So saying I didn't do it is much better, is reliable, unlike I couldn't have done that, I wasn't there, right? Or I wouldn't have done that, I'm too nice to do that. Then 3rd, specificity. Did they address the specific accusation made against them, or respond to an altered version that was too narrow, too broad, or too vague? Carefully examining these aspects can significantly aid in determining the reliability of a denial. So, for example, like O.J. Simpson, if he said, I didn't kill my wife, that would be reliable. But things like, I couldn't have killed my wife, or I couldn't have done something like that, or I couldn't have jumped them, right? So anything that changes the directness of the denial weakens it and makes it less reliable. All right, so since we can't analyze Christian Bruckner's denial about Madeleine because it was originally written in German, I'm just putting that out there so if you do see someone deny something on TV or in the news, you are able to assess it. And recently on X, we analyzed Nikki Haley's denial, for example, about cheating on her husband, which is weak. Most recently, Boris Johnson. He issued a very unreliable denial based on the Putin-Tucker Carlson interview, which many of my subscribers pointed out and actually tagged me on, which is great that they were able to spot an unreliable denial. Now, if someone gives an unreliable denial, does it mean they're guilty? Of course not. But if you're betting on it or your relationship depends on it, you need to factor in the reliability of the denial.
Helge Busching claims he knows something of the truth when it comes to Madeleine McCann. He is a critical police witness in the case, claiming Christian Bruckner revealed to him his chilling involvement in the 3-year-old's disappearance and suspected murder 17 years ago.
Ja, die hat ja nicht geschrien.
He said she didn't scream.
Once again, that's the revelation. So notice the priming. He revealed his knowledge that Christian was involved in the kidnapping. And once again, what does it show us? This out of context pull quote of him saying she didn't scream. Contextotomy. So far in this video, we've looked at priming, Kafka trapping, contextotomy, and these techniques are not unique to 60 Minutes Australia. They are not unique to true crime reporting.
But speaking publicly for the first time, Helge's information about Bruckner committing sexual crimes against other victims also puts him at the heart of a new trial that's...
All right, and now the other evidence he has and the other stories do not relate to Madeleine. So the only thing he has that relates to Madeleine is an out-of-context quote that the media has chopped up to look like a confession. That's weak. The other thing it indicates to me is they've got nothing on Christian B, because if they had it, they wouldn't be resorting to these parlor tricks.
That starts in Germany this week. Compellingly, he claims to have seen vile video recordings of rapes committed by Bruckner.
Ja, der hat, die Dame war gefesselt.
So all this might be true. Does it have anything to do with the kidnapping of Madeleine McCann? Not at all. Not one iota. However, it could be poisoning the well, and it could be appealing to spite in order to get naive people to think, hey, Christian B is a bad guy. He must have done this. That's the logical leap. And that's the leap I think 60 Minutes Australia is hoping people make, and this German prosecutor is hoping people make.
The lady was tied up, and I also saw the swimming goggles on her head. There was a man all in black clothes, like leggings, fabrics, with black gloves and a black mask, who then threw the woman around on the bed, turned her on her stomach, and who whipped this woman when he sat down next to her, and then he took off the mask. Then I saw that it was Christian B.
Da habe ich dann gesehen, das war Christian B.
Bruckner has been charged with 2 counts of sexual abuse of children and 3 counts of rape, crimes he's accused of committing between 2000 and 2017. As he told investigative journalist Jutta Rabe, Helge claims to have seen disturbing recordings of 2 of the 3 rapes, making him central to the case.
Dann habe ich dann halt ein drittes Video.
I watched a third video, and there was another girl on it who was tied to a tree, with her hands behind her, completely naked, and Mr. Christian B was sitting there on the sofa.
B hat da auf dem Sofa gesessen.
She was like 14, 15 years old.
Schwarze, lange Haare.
I think that the crime of Christian B is some kind of cruel crime. And we have rapists.
This is, right, as you guys know, I have a particular dislike of sadists, of people who enjoy inflicting pain on other people. And there are some things that are common among all sadists, at least from my observation. And one of the things they like to do is document and publicize their crimes. So I am not surprised at all that he would record his crimes and want to show them off to people, because that is part of the kick that sadists get, and it is actually one of the ways that we are able to spot them and catch them. And that applies to sadists like Ruby Franke or Jada Pinkett Smith, all the way up to sadists like Christian Bruckner, it sounds like. In fact, I posted 2 examples of this not long ago on X. And I pointed out on X, the downfall of many sadists lies in their urge to publicize their wrongdoings. This compulsion, ironically, is their greatest weakness. And one of the examples is this guy, Christopher Paul Neal, who was abusing children in Thailand and posting, just like most of the as far as I'm concerned, every sadist loves to publicize when they apply pain to other people and make other people suffer. What he would do was he would abuse young boys and then post the videos and photos online and swirl his face in order to mask his identity. So he was able, his compulsion to publicize the evil things he did was so strong, he included his face but swirled it, thinking it would protect him. And heroes at Interpol in 2007 actually developed technology to unswirl his face and figure out who he was and lock him up. The other one I posted about on X not long ago was Jimmy Savile. And there I said, sadists relish in publicizing their misdeeds. It's this compulsion that enables their capture, provided we listen closely. And I included this disturbing clip from TV, from the BBC, of Jimmy Savile with the boy, and I'll just play it quickly.
That is supposed to be me, that's. What did I ever do to you that you would draw that picture of me?
Everything.
Super times for all. No danger about it. In fact, let me tell you, if you don't work in a hospital, you really are missing something. In fact,
So it's a young boy in a hospital that he's allegedly, I guess, supposedly volunteering at. And the boy drew a picture of Savile with fangs. And Savile asked him, "Why did you draw me like that? What did I do to you?" And the boy said, "Everything." If we listen closely, the signs are there for sadists. And Christian Bruckner obviously sounds like a sadist. As you can see from these posts, I have no sympathy for sadists. That includes Christian Bruckner. But I am also not so emotionally overwhelmed that logic goes out the window. Just because Christian Bruckner is a bad guy does not mean that he kidnapped Madeleine McCann.
Who rape for only sexual feelings or something like that. And Christian B injured people and gives them pain, more pain than it needs for raping the person.
But Hans Christian Wolters, who is prosecuting this case, has a seemingly impossible task ahead. He is asking the court to convict Bruckner on these 2 counts of rape, even though the identity of the victims is unknown and the tapes are now missing.
So that is also scary. I hope they have some evidence that Christian B did any of this if they're going to convict him. Because if they have nothing but the word of another petty criminal, and I have no idea what sort of plea bargaining they did. I've had, on my previous Christian B video, some of my German audience commented and said that there is no plea bargaining in the German system. But can deals be made about accommodations in the prison? Or can they get a TV? Or can under the table, off the record, favors be made? So even if there's not a, like America, quid pro quo, very clearly defined plea bargaining system, is there some sort of off-the-record, under-the-table system that could be influencing Helger Busching's testimony? I'd be very curious about that. So it appears like, I don't know what Christian B's done on his other things, but as far as these two go, they're trying to convict him without any evidence at all except the word of an informant, which is kind of scary. And I wonder if they're trying to set the precedent here in order to convict him about Madeleine McCann. Right? So if they're able to convict him on these things based on nothing but Helger's word, that would be a great precedent for them to say, okay, we got him on these with nothing. Let's try to get him on Madeleine with nothing. Because that will cement my record as a hero prosecutor, the guy who solved the Madeleine McCann case. And the context that will be left out is the conviction was made with no evidence at all.
It is not ideal, is it, if you don't have that video evidence?
Yes, of course. It would be much better if we have a video or if we have DNA or something like that, but we haven't, and so we have to work with this evidence we have, and we think it's enough, and we will see if the court will have the same opinion.
Going by his criminal record, Christian Bruckner is a terrifying predator. He is currently serving a 7-year jail sentence for raping a 72-year-old woman, but he also has convictions for raping children. As confounded...
Okay, so he has other convictions, hopefully, that were proved with better evidence.
As this might be, the age range of his victims doesn't surprise Mark Hoffman, a profiler whose job is to analyse psychopaths.
How can somebody rape a 72-year-old woman, but also children? How is it possible that someone has like these very different sexual orientations at the same time? Well, it's important to understand that these crimes are not about sex, and it's not about sexual orientation. It's just about feeling power over defenseless victims.
Yeah, I agree with him. It's a sadist. See, I think he's not saying a sadist because sadist is no longer in the DSM-6 or whatever the psychologists use to actually diagnose people. I'm not a clinician, so I'm not diagnosing him. When I say sadist, I'm saying someone who enjoys inflicting pain on other people based on the things that I've showed in my other videos about how to spot a sadist, the things that I look for. And so far, it's consistent across people that I believe are sadists, and I'm able to predict what they will do based on those criteria. And for me, that's good enough to work with. So I agree, Christian B seems to be a sadist. It is not about the sexual gratification. It is about the torture and the infliction of pain and the documenting of that pain and publicizing of that pain. I'm not surprised that he showed those videos to other people. I wouldn't be surprised if he posted them on the black web, on the dark web for other people to watch.
And this is why children and elderly people, for me, it's not a contradiction, it's a similarity. Because the similarity is not age, it's vulnerability.
It was the most horrific attack and went on for hours and hours, all being filmed.
The key to this latest trial is Bruckner's alleged third rape victim, Irish woman Hazel Behan. She was 20 and at her most vulnerable, sleeping when in 2004, Bruckner is accused of breaking into her apartment and raping her.
So interesting. In this case, he broke in and raped the girl in her apartment. He didn't sedate her with paint thinner and take her somewhere else. Is that the rule or the exception for his MO? Like I said, the fact that they're not saying his MO lines up with the Madeleine McCann kidnapping story suggests that it doesn't. So what they don't tell us in these biased documentaries is just important as what they do tell us. Because so far what they've told us is extremely circumstantial and weak, which means that they probably don't have anything concrete or stronger to put on display. Because if they had it, they would show it.
The attack was at knife point and lasted 4 hours. Hazel reported the rape to local police, who failed to investigate. But when Bruckner was named as the prime suspect in the Maddie McCann investigation in 2020, she recognised him immediately as her attacker.
I always said from the get-go that my attacker was a German with piercing blue eyes and a voice I would recognise immediately.
In their investigation of Christian Bruckner,
I wonder how she heard the voice. I haven't seen any clips of Christian B talking, so I wonder if she contacted the police and then they played clips of him talking to her in order for her to identify him. That must be what they did. So it's very possible that he actually is guilty of assaulting this young Irish woman. But that still has nothing to do with Madeleine McCann. And in fact, if he is guilty in this case, it suggests that his MO is to attack people in their residence, not sedate them and transport them somewhere else.
Police searched his motorhome and found young girls' swimwear. But their most confronting discovery was made in Bruckner's abandoned factory. Buried under his dead dog, they uncovered 8,000 USB files of animal and child abuse material. The abused girls, who had all been filmed, ranged from babies to 12-year-olds. Given...
So 8,000. Now, don't get me wrong. I would love to fry him. I don't care what happens to him. But the fact that they found all this data that he went out of his way to bury, all thousands of files, and not one photo or one link to Madeleine suggests that it doesn't exist. So the plethora of evidence that they've collected on this guy, but still not found one link to Madeleine, is the dog that isn't barking. It's the only thing that matters at this point. They spent 4 years, thousands of data points saying he's a bad guy, saying he was in the area. They have his whole history back to the 2000s, records, informants. What connects him to Madeleine? Nothing.
Christian B's past criminal history, the allegations he's facing now at this new trial, when, if ever, might he be free?
In German, there is a possibility to bring someone in prison with no end of the sentence. So maybe he will die in prison.
Okay, good. That's fine with me.
Die in prison, maybe.
That's one possibility the court will have in the trial.
Remorseless, Christian Bruckner has left a trail of horrific offending against children. In 2013, in this pedophile chat room, he revealed his abhorrent daydream.
All right, so once again, we see the pattern of the sadist. I will document how I will torture her. If he actually kidnapped Madeleine, I would expect there to just be some video, right? Something that matches the pattern of the sadist. They love documenting things. So the fact that they found his stash of videos and photos and there's still nothing linking Madeleine to him should be causing the police to reassess. And maybe they are, right? And that's why they haven't charged him.
Prosecutor.
And that is the consequence of the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. That is the wasted time and resources pursuing Christian B, is because they started off by shooting a gun at a big wall and counting where the bullets clustered, where the evidence clustered, and focusing all their research and resources there. And the Texas sharpshooter fallacy comes from statistics. It doesn't come from criminal investigations, but it applies just the same. You should paint your target first and then shoot to see if your bullets hit on target. And then you know you should go all in on those resources and time to pursue that target. Like we did on this channel. We went in with a blank canvas. We looked at the parents. They sounded deceptive when you would not expect the parents of a missing child to be deceptive. And that we painted that target. And now we're shooting our bullets at it, shooting our theories at it, and seeing if they line up. And I've even been going one step further than these police are and considering other suspects. When Christian B's name was first brought up in my comments, we looked at that story about him, and the amount of deception in that news article astounded me. And even now, we're giving them another shot to convince us that we have it wrong, that the parents are innocent. In my opinion, the parents, like I said, are guilty. And once again, it is full of deception and half-truths and manipulation. All they've shown us regarding Christian B and Madeleine McCann is that one out-of-context quote from a petty criminal.
Prosecutors believe he'd already lived out that dark fantasy, abducting Madeleine McCann in 2007. You have said, Mr. Walters, that you have concrete evidence that Christian B abducted Maddie McCann.
Yes, because she was not murdered in the hotel.
So that's his concrete evidence. So his concrete evidence, listen to how circular the logic is. circular logic. I have concrete evidence that Christian B killed Madeleine. What's your evidence? Well, he didn't kill her in the apartment. He abducted her from the apartment, so he must have killed her somewhere else. So the premise assumes the end. It's circular reasoning. And my question is, my big concern here is he so deluded that he is experiencing cognitive dissonance? So the fact that he's done all this investigation into Christian and still found nothing that ties Madeleine, is he unable to get out of that circular logic? Or is he so cynical that he knows he's wrong, but he thinks to himself, hey, if I can pin the Madeleine McCann case on this guy, the parents can get closure. It will boost my reputation. I will probably get promoted. I'll have a bunch of articles written about me. I'll get to do more TV interviews. And the British police and, the British people can actually save money on taxes because of me, because I will have wrapped up this case and they no longer need to fund the search for Maddie. So I really can't tell if it's cynicism or just cognitive dissonance. Neither one is good.
Do you know where she was murdered?
I cannot speak about these things.
What investigators have revealed...
So notice how deceptive the response is. Well, I can't talk about that. It's classified. He might as well have said it's classified. Because of course he doesn't know. If they knew anything, like I said, it would be in this documentary. They did not want to produce a nothing burger. This is a nothing burger. This is nothing. It introduces nothing new. Believe me, the 60 Minutes people do not want to put out a nothing burger. That's why they did all this slick editing in the intro to make it look like they had more than they did. So if he had something, he would give it. The fact that he says, he gives, cryptic response, I can't talk about this. It's classified. It's confidential. I cannot reveal that right now. It's just another way of saying, I don't know.
Is that Christian Bruckner is their main suspect because mobile phone data puts him near Maddie's apartment the night she disappeared from the Ocean Club.
All right, so mobile phone data puts him near the apartment. Like I said, this is the Texas sharpshooter. If you look at enough phones and cross-reference it with enough sexual abuse criminals, enough people on the sex offender registry, you are going to get clusters. You are going to get coincidences. And the issue is, if you gather all the data before you develop a suspect or a theory, that seems to be what happened here. The other thing I'm curious about is, how close was it? So let's listen to what they said. They said it puts him in the area. They didn't say it put him in the hotel. Could it do that? Can mobile phone data do that? I don't know.
Have revealed is that Christian Bruckner is their main suspect because mobile phone data puts him near Maddie's apartment the night she disappeared.
So it puts him near the apartment. If it put him in the apartment, I'm sure they would have said that. And I'm sure that if we were to cross-reference every phone of every sex offender in the area, there would be hundreds. And depending on what we mean by in the area of the hotel, it could even be thousands. Just based on the amount of data we can collect now, the amount of coincidences, and how vague we are with the time period. Like, did she say he was in the area the day she was abducted? Or around the time she was abducted? Let me listen. And then what is the area? Is it all Playa de Luge? How accurate are the cell towers?
What investigators have revealed is that Christian Bruckner is their main suspect because mobile phone data puts him near Maddie's apartment the night she disappeared from the Ocean Club.
Okay, so the night she disappeared. So at least that is good. See, so he's their top suspect because he's a sex offender and his phone puts him in the area. It should be he's the top suspect and his phone puts him in the area. They're doing the investigation backwards.
He knew the layout of the resort, having once worked there, and various witnesses claim he has made confessions to them. And then, of
Various witnesses. Where are these witnesses?
course, there's the potential evidence police have collected that we don't know about.
The public prosecutors said pretty clearly that they know that he killed Maddie McCann. And this sounds like they have some other evidence that goes beyond suspicion.
So this is what I was saying earlier. The cryptic response. We have something. We can't show it to you. We might not even charge him and reveal it in court, but we've got something. We've got something big. If people have something, they show it to you. And this even goes back to my reliable denial point from earlier. When someone is innocent, they deny the claim and then they present proof. When someone is guilty, they issue an unreliable denial, and then of course they don't even offer to present proof because they don't have any. So presenting proof doesn't even occur to them. So if the police had something, go ahead and charge him and present the proof to us. Otherwise, quit tainting the jury pool. Quit poisoning the well.
There's a lot riding on it, isn't there?
Right. At this point, I also need to say that now it's really the obligation of the public prosecutors to present some evidence, because if you go in public and you tell the world media, we know that this man killed Maddie McCann, but then for 3 years, there is no evidence, no trial, no interrogation. This is also not fair.
I agree. So well said. I don't even remember watching this earlier. So that's great. I also think I've seen his name in my comments. So I think it was like Nick Hoffman. If you are a subscriber to the channel, Nick, please comment below so I can pin your comment. I think I've seen his comments in the past on my Madeleine McCann videos.
German prosecutor Christian Wolters is unapologetic about how carefully and slowly the investigation is proceeding. But he does concede this is his last high-stakes play in solving the Maddie McCann case. How confident are you that you will get a conviction in the case of Maddie McCann?
The investigation is still going on. We have work to do. And when we will come to an end, and if we think it's enough, then we will charge Christian B. And if it's not enough, then we have to close the case.
Right. So unless it's a laydown, unless they have everything, they won't even charge him. To me, this sounds like a poker bluff. Okay, I fold. I don't have to show you my cards because I was bluffing the entire time. Like I said earlier, there's two types of bad prosecutors. The ones who only prosecute when they know they can get a conviction because they want that perfect conviction rate. And the ones who don't care if the person they're charging is innocent or guilty as long as they can prove their case. And this seems to be like the former. If you've got enough to make the case to persuade yourself that he's guilty, present it to the jury and let them decide. People have been convicted on circumstantial evidence.
Close the case or look elsewhere?
Then we have to close the case because
And even the journalists thought that was weird, right? So if you can't get him, you have to close the case. If he's not the one, isn't the actual kidnapper still out there? And he says, which is bizarre, actually. So I'm glad she at least pushed back on that. If Christian B is not the guy, you would think that they would continue searching then. Because the kidnapper is still out there, presumably. And if you're actually a good prosecutor or investigator, you would go back and investigate the parents. Because as far as I know, they've never actually been sat down and interrogated individually.
Because I think there will be nothing more. So you have to say that's everything we could find. No one in the whole world will find more.
See, this is someone who has been This is someone who has fallen for the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. There's no more data I can collect. There's no more clusters I can find. This guy has the most clusters. He's been focused on the data. In my opinion, he's speaking like someone who's been focusing on the data, all the points of data, instead of focusing on a theory and then looking to test the theory. On this channel, we do the exact opposite. We start at Occam's razor, what's the most likely scenario, and then we give whoever the suspect is every opportunity to prove that they didn't do it or that they did do it or give us their theories. We listen to their words.
Hello, I'm Tara Brown. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia.
All right, if you got value out of this video, please let me know in the comments. If you want me to continue my McCann series, please let me know in the comments. On your screen right now, if you love this video, you'll love the one on your screen right now, recommended by YouTube. If you want to see all my McCann's videos in my McCann's playlist, that's also on your screen. Until next time, stay true.